In this video, I'm going to show you how to install a ceiling fan. If you're going to use a ceiling fan with remote control, you want to make sure you don't have a wall-mounted dimmer switch or a speed control switch. First thing you need to do is turn the power off. You can do that either at the circuit panel or just turn the switch off. The next step is to remove the light fixture. Now if you turn the switch off, you just have to make sure nobody comes in and turns the switch on while you're working on it. So it's better to turn the power off at the circuit panel. After removing the bulbs, I locate the two screws holding the fixture to the electrical box. After I remove the two screws, I can drop the fixture and expose the wiring. Now before I start, I take my little tester and make sure there's no power running through the wires. Before I tested this, I turned the switch back on just so you could see what it looks like if there's power going through the wires. Now I go back and turn the switch off and you can see there's no power through the wires and it's safe to work on. Now I'll finish disconnecting the fixture by removing the wire nuts. Next I remove the bracket the fixture was connected to. Before you go any further, you want to make sure the electrical box is mounted to something solid in the ceiling. If the box isn't mounted securely, over time the ceiling fan can cause the box to come loose and the fan will fall out of the ceiling. Open the box for the ceiling fan and locate the mounting bracket. Now I locate one of the parts bags and look for the mounting screws that hold the bracket to the electrical box. Next I install the bracket to the electrical box. You want to make sure the bracket is really tight to the electrical box. You don't want any movement, otherwise the fan can work its way loose. After you tighten the bracket, there's one thing you need to check before going any further. After you tighten the bracket to the box, you need to make sure the bracket's not buried into the drywall. Now if you look here, you can see after I've tightened the bracket has buried itself into the drywall. If you leave it like this, you will not be able to install the fan and you'll have to take everything apart and space it down. This piece right here will not mount to the bracket. You also don't want to use too thick of a spacer. If you use too many spacers, you'll see that there's a big gap between the ceiling fan and the ceiling. I'm going to use different thicknesses of nuts to get mine down to the right spacing. You can use washers, but I had to shim mine farther down than just the thickness of a washer, and I didn't want to use too many washers. It'd be too hard to hold up into place. Now there are two ways you can install this ceiling fan. You can install it with a downrod or solid to the ceiling. Because of the ceiling fan to head clearance, I'm going to install mine directly to the ceiling without a downrod. To mount the ring directly to the ceiling fan, I'm going to remove these two screws first. If you'd like to see how to mount this with a downrod, I'll show you at the end of the video. Now to mount the ring directly to the fan, we're going to have to remove 3 of the screws. Here I'm going to remove the 3 screws that are not recessed into the fan. Then I'm going to remove the white gasket material from the ring. Now if you look in the ring, you'll see there are 3 larger holes and 3 smaller holes. The larger holes fit over the screw heads, and the smaller ones are so you can attach the ring to the fan. Now to hook up the wiring, I'm going to hang the ceiling fan from this pin right here. Now I'm going to use one of the screw holes to hang it. Just don't use the slotted hole. Now I can safely and easily hook the fan up. Now because I'm not using a downrod, I don't need all this wire hanging down, so I'm going to trim some of it back. Now when I trim it back, I'm going to make sure I leave the tags on the wires so I know what wire goes to what. This is very important for this fan because it has a wireless remote. Then I'll strip the wires back so I can twist them together. Here is the wireless receiver. It's color coded and it also is labeled for what wires go where. If you have multiple ceiling fans with the remote, you'll want to change the dip switch settings. You'll find the dip switch for the remote in the battery compartment. You can set them in any combination you want, just make sure they're both the same. On the receiver, you'll see there are 3 wires on one side and 2 on the other. Black, white, and blue on this receiver will hook up to the fan, and the black and white one will hook up to the wires coming out of the box. And this wire is the antenna. Now I'll attach the wires from the remote receiver to the ceiling fan. First I'll twist the wires together, then I'll install wire nuts. Before I tuck the receiver in and mount the fan, I'm going to use the remote and make sure the fan works. It started up, so I know the remote works. Now I can finish installing. Now I couldn't hold the camera and tuck the receiver in at the same time, so I'll show you where it goes, and it's all just a matter of tucking in everything and getting it out of the way. When you install the receiver, this side right here should be facing down and the flat side facing up. And the receiver goes into this space right here. Now just tuck it all in. Make sure you don't pinch any wires when you're installing the fan. You can also tuck the antenna in. Some people leave the antenna out. I've had no problems with leaving the antenna tucked in. Here you can see how everything's all tucked in and it's ready to be mounted to the bracket. Now I just lift the fan off the hook. Then I align the slotted holes on the fan with the screws on the bracket. And it slides over this screw right here, and that'll happen on both sides of the fan. Now when I was trying to put the fan on to the bracket, I can feel there were some wires in the way, so I had to redo some tucking. Now what I'm struggling with here is there's 2 little washers on the screws on the bracket. It's hard to get those lined up to where they're on the outside of the ceiling fan. Then you just twist the fan until it holds into place. Once you've twisted it into place, tighten the screws, then install the other 2 screws. This is what it'll look like when you're done. I'm not super happy with the gap I have between the ceiling and the ceiling fan, and I should have used a little bit thinner shim. However, I'd rather have a little bit of a gap than have it too tight to the drywall, because it's really hard to get that fan installed if it's too close. Now we're ready for the blades. Before we install the blades, we need to remove these little rubber spacers that are on the ceiling fan. These are only there for shipping, so they must be removed. And this is what it should look like before you install the blades. Now it's time to install the brackets to the blades. Now my fan came with double-sided blades. One side is white and one side is a wood grain. I want the white side facing down. This is how the bracket will go to have the white side facing down. So just put the bracket onto the blade and flip it over. Then install them with the supplied screws and washer. Now do this to the remaining blades. Now I'm ready to install the blades on the fan. Now I'll take the screws and washers supplied with the fan and just line up the holes. And this is what it should look like. I won't tighten the first screw down until the second one is tightened. Now I'll move on to the light kit. Now I'll just take the light kit, take the wires from the light kit and hook them up to the wires in the fan. The wire coming out of the fan will probably say light kit on it or light. Then the white wire from the fan will hook up to the white wire on the light kit. Now I'll tuck the wires in and screw the light kit to the fan. Now install the bulbs. Now I'll make sure the bulbs work before I put the globe on. Now I'll install the globe and it's done. Now I'll show you how to install the downrod. First, remove the 2 set screws. Then take the downrod and set it into the fan. You'll have to wiggle it around a little bit to get it past the wires. Once I get the pin through, I'll install the retaining pin. The next thing I'll do is reinstall the set screws. Then I take the fan and hang it into place. Then I'll lift it into place and set it into the cup on the bracket. The part I didn't show you before this step is sliding on the trim ring before you hook it into the cup. Once you get this into the bracket, line the slot up on the downrod with the pin in the bracket. And here's the pin on the bracket. And here's the slot on the downrod. Set the downrod into the bracket, then twist it until you feel the pin fall into the slot. Just remember to put this trim ring over the downrod before you install the fan. The rest of the installation is pretty much the same. Now if you'd like to see more videos like this one, click right here. And if you haven't already subscribed, click here. Until next time, thanks for watching.